Hey guys, my name is Brandon Chun, and my video project is going to be about Chapter 13, Personality. In this video, I'll be discussing 3 different topics, which are number 1, Freud's division of personality, number 2, Carl Rogers and self-concept, and number 3, trait theory. Hope you enjoy! Concept 1, Freud's division of personality. To start off, here's Sigmund Freud. As the father of psychoanalysis and a neuroscientist, Freud believed that the mind was split into 3 different parts, each of which manifested primarily one level of consciousness, although he did acknowledge that overlap was possible. As some of you may already know, the 3 divisions of personality are the id, ego, and superego. The id is the unconscious, instinctive component of your personality. It is the part of the mind considered most natural, as it holds no morality or restraint and simply wishes to fulfill the body's natural biological needs, such as food, safety, and pleasure. The want for instant gratification for pleasure can be defined as the pleasure principle. In contrast, the ego is the most conscious part of your personality, taking on the role of executive director. As the rational, logical component of your personality, it functions through the reality principle, which considers the consequences of the id's wants before it satisfies them. And in between these 2 states of consciousness is the preconscious superego. The superego acts as the base of morality because it holds what is known as the conscience. Note, not conscious, conscience, and is known to be aware of thoughts just below the surface of awareness. Implementations of Freud's division of personality can often be seen in cartoons. Here you see Squidward from SpongeBob contemplating over some issue, and his id and superego show up in the form of the devil and angel, respectively. That leaves Squidward in his physical body as the ego. The id wants Squidward to undoubtedly do whatever he is contemplating, but his superego, as the angel, is telling Squidward to consider the consequences of his actions and therefore tells him not to do it. Another, more funny example in SpongeBob following the idea of cartoons representing id, ego, and superego can be seen here. Patrick is thinking about whether he should eat the donut or not. The devil donut, or the id, is trying to convince Patrick to eat the donut, while the angel donut, or the superego, is trying to tell Patrick to save the donut. These examples clearly show how there is often conflict between the id and the superego, as the id wants to do something to satisfy its desires, while the superego tries to be moral and aware of the consequences. This scenario can be seen in real life, as people, from a day-to-day basis, consider both the benefits and consequences of their possible actions through the id and superego. In other words, you go through the same situations these characters did without knowing it, an example being your superego telling you to do your Psychology 101 video project because you know it's supposed to be 10 minutes long and will take a long time, but your id telling you to just do it later and rewatch The Office for the 3rd time. Concept 2, Carl Rogers and self-concept. Before I talk about his theory of self-concept, let's talk about Carl Rogers himself. Obviously, from the fact that he was a famous psychologist, Carl Rogers was an extremely intelligent man. He obtained both a master's and a PhD from Columbia University and taught as a professor at multiple institutions, some being University of Chicago, University of Wisconsin, and the Western Behavioral Sciences Institution. Because of his tremendous work, Carl Rogers is deemed one of the founders of the humanistic perspective, the approach to psychology we learned about in Chapter 1. The notion that Carl Rogers adopted about human nature is their inclination to achieve their full potential, which is the self-actualizing theory, and their image that they hold of themselves, or self-concept. The 2 essential components of self are one's real self and ideal self. These are straightforward terms. The real self consists of one's actual characteristics and abilities, while the ideal self is simply what a person strives to become. Rogers stated that if the real self and ideal self were similar, then people would feel content and satisfied with themselves, but a disparity between the 2 would cause anxiety. This can be understood through logical reasoning. If the real self and ideal self are similar, then it would be reasonable to assume that the ideal self is a goal that the real self can achieve, whether it is through hard work, training your mind, or something of the sorts. However, if the real self and ideal self display a great contrast, then it would stand that the ideal self, in this case, is a goal that is essentially unattainable through healthy means. A better idea would be to slowly approach your final goal by using steps. For instance, the real self could envision an ideal self similar to itself, and when it has reached that goal, recreate an improved ideal self until you reach your final goal. By doing this, you can achieve your goal through healthy means because you will be slowly improving instead of setting unattainable goals. There are many applications of self-concept. You can use the idea of self-concept to have a more optimistic perspective on life. You can also use it to motivate yourself towards a specific goal. However, you must be careful not to use it negatively. Here is a video on how you can apply the idea of self-concept in a healthy, positive way.
Hello there. I'm here today to talk to you about a tool we use during Be Clear called the ideal self. Basically, the ideal self is just who you are when you're at your best. It's unique to you and can be whatever you want it to be. Let's say, for example, your ideal self is caring, creative, and athletic. You've identified those qualities and we'll work together to help you recognize how those traits can help you make decisions. Think about an example for a minute. You get in a fight with your partner. You were supposed to take out the trash. You didn't do it. They're angry and yelling at you. You're yelling back. You both go to bed angry, and you wake up the next day and you go, man, I wish that hadn't happened. Had you developed your ideal self, when your partner started yelling at you, you could have stopped for a minute and said, how would my ideal self have handled the situation? And you can look at your partner and you can say, I am really sorry that I didn't take the trash out. I'm going to get on that right now because my ideal self is caring. Maybe you're thinking about your ideal self being creative, and you could maybe make up a funny story about why the trash didn't get taken out, and at least now your partner's laughing. Or maybe you're thinking about the athletic part and running out the door to avoid the entire thing. Ultimately, our goal is for you to think, what would my ideal self do here?
Concept 3. Trait theory. Okay, and to finish off, I'll be going over trait theory. Gordon Allport was the first man to introduce the idea of trait theory. He personally scanned the dictionary and specifically chose words that describe personality. He argued that traits are innate. Although he lacked scientific evidence, modern findings have confirmed the heritability of personality traits, making his claim true. Next, we have Raymond Cattell, who further divided those traits that Gordon Allport chose into two subsections: surface traits and source traits. Surface traits are characteristics that are observable in the physical sense. In contrast, source traits are simple traits that are the basis for surface traits. Cattell then developed a set of source traits that contribute to personality. More recently, researchers have created a 5-factor model to represent the core of human personality, and I will show you a video on this now.
Some early personality psychologists analyzed thousands of words describing personality or behavior. When applying something called factor analysis to test results, a structure with 5 factors appears. It is possible to increase or decrease the number of factors both mathematically and in theory, but the general consensus is that the 5-factor structure is a robust framework and also that it is not intended to be a comprehensive description. They are numbered in the same way in all languages and are often called 1. Extraversion, 2. Agreeableness, 3. Conscientiousness, 4. Emotional stability, 5. Intellect or openness to experience. The 5 factors can also be called traits. They are your habitual patterns of behavior, thoughts, and emotions. They are relatively stable over time, and every individual has her own variation of them.
These 5 factors can be turned into an acronym of OCEAN, standing for openness, conscientiousness, extraversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. Applications of the 5-factor model can be seen in psychology. Today, psychologists use this test to assess the personality of their patients. As for applications for the everyday person, I would say this 5-factor model would be an interesting way to find out more about your personality. Obviously, these traits encompass a wide range of qualities, so everybody can find their place on this model. Anyways, that's it for this video. Just to remind you, the 3 concepts discussed in this video were Freud's division of personality through the id, ego, and superego, Carl Rogers and his idea of self-concept, and the origins of trait theory and how it is perceived today, which is through the 5-factor model. I hope you enjoyed, and thanks for watching.